Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I hereby declare open the third meeting. We will now proceed with the review of China. I now have the honor to warmly welcome Her Excellency Ms. Melissa Anevas, Head of Delegation of China, and her distinguished delegation, and give her the floor to introduce the national report. Excellency, you have the floor. Microphone, please.
Honorable Chair and distinguished delegates, the delegation of China is delighted to be in this review. China attaches great importance to the promotion and protection of human rights domestically and in cooperation with the international community. With regards to freedom of opinion and expression, in 2016, the law of the People's Republic of China on administration of activities of overseas NGOs in the mainland of China was adopted. Guidelines have been issued for the registration and adoption of operation measures for the data collection for the better facilitation of resource collection for both NGOs and their coordination with the government. Chinese government is determined to offer the best protection to its internet users through the appropriate levels of content filtering. Pornographic and violent content on the internet has been highly scrutinized. The Office of the Central Cyberspace Affairs Commission focuses on monitoring live video streaming and fosters healthy and positive content online. In response to international terrorism, China has taken steps to maintain a high level of national security to prevent terrorist activities by filtering content. With regards to human trafficking, criminal punishment is strengthened under the criminal law for buyers of abducted women and children and those engaged in any activity of that category. This is along with the formulation of judicial interpretations of trials in trafficking by the Supreme People's Court. China's action plan against human abduction and trafficking for 2013 to 2020 continues to be implemented to prevent and crack down on such activities in accordance with the law. With regards to the rights of the children, China has ratified the Convention on the Rights of the Child in 1992, recognizing the inherent right to life of every child, ensuring the maximum extent possible the survival and development of the child. China has set up a system of policies to strengthen child disease prevention and treatment, such as expanding the coverage of national immunization programs, reinforcing the construction and maintenance of the cold chain vaccine management system, and regulating vaccination. China continues to implement 9 years of free education to safeguard compulsory education rights of children, accompanying rural workers migrating to urban areas. With regards to climate change and environment, China has attached a significant amount of effort in alleviating climate change in the 13th five-year plan. Upon ratification of the Paris Agreement in 2016, China enacted domestic laws and implemented local policies such as the 10-100-1000 initiative. China has already reached its 2020 carbon intensity target in 2017. The right to water is further recognized as essential for realizing the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, leading to the action plan launched in the UN headquarters in March of 2018, with 6 major policies initiated. With regards to gender inequality and violence, the Chinese government has actively promulgated gender equality in education, including for teaching and scientific research. Measures such as the compulsory education law of the PRC have been implemented to improve the education of women. China ensures the equality of employment for both women and men in the sphere of the workplace, with accordance to Chapter 5 of the 1992 Law on the Protection of Rights and Interests of Women. Further, for the violence against women, 29 provinces have already formulated regulations and policies to prevent this. The anti-domestic violence law has been implemented in the country. Further, China is open and willing to cooperate with the international community and looks forward to the suggestion raised in this review. Thank you.
I thank again Her Excellency for her introduction of the national report, and let me now proceed with the interactive dialogue. The first speaker on our list of speakers is the distinguished representative of Cuba. Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you. The state of Cuba is honored to be able to discuss the issue of freedom of expression and opinion with the People's Republic of China. In the national report, it was mentioned that China has strengthened resource allocation for the NGOs. It would be at our utmost interest to learn more about the cooperation between the government and the NGOs. Could the delegate further elaborate on with what government-level measures the NGOs are being protected on their rights to freedom of opinion and expression? We would also like to hear about whether the government will attempt to expand the status of foreign NGOs in the future, considering the recent 2017 Foreign NGO Law has tightened the control over the foreign NGOs. Thank you.
The delegation of China would first like to thank the delegation of Cuba for raising this really important topic in China's human rights progress. The law of People's Republic of China on administration of activities of overseas non-governmental organizations in the mainland China was adopted by Standing Committee of the National People's Congress in April 2016, clearly stating the registration requirements, legal responsibilities of local overseas NGOs, the regulation of registration and filling, the regulation of activities, and regulation of supervision and management, and operational guidelines of these NGOs. The registration and operational details are set out for data collection of the database to facilitate better resources allocation for different NGOs, as well as the coordination between NGOs and the government. The law aims to protect the legitimate rights and interests of the NGOs and facilitating communications and cooperation. This shows that China is recognizing the role and status of NGOs and their right to participate in local affairs. In regard of the rights they have, NGOs has the right as long as they abide by the law of the People's Republic of China on administration of activities of overseas non-governmental organizations in mainland China and abide on all local customs when collecting data of local activities and also local situations. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The next speaker is the United States of America. You have the floor.
Thank you. This delegation is concerned about the persistence of the phenomenon of trafficking in persons in Hong Kong, China, and its reluctance to take steps which could lead to the extension of the protocol to prevent, suppress, and punish trafficking in persons, especially women and children, supplementing the Palermo Convention. Is China intending to take it further to the extension of the Palermo Protocol? What concrete steps is it taking to fight the trafficking in persons in the region? Thank you.
Thank you to delegates of the United States of America for your concern about the human trafficking situation in China. With regards to the implemented measures taken in Hong Kong, Hong Kong has recently launched an action plan in combating human trafficking with relation, in particular, to foreign domestic helpers. The Palermo Protocol, in particular, is ratified already in the PRC, but does not extend to the Hong Kong SAR. And the current legal framework of Hong Kong SAR has provisions in relation to human trafficking, in particular Section 129 of the Crimes Ordinance. In the achievements of the action plan of Hong Kong, they have created a maximum penalty for Hong Kong. And they have created a maximum penalty for Hong Kong against those employment agencies that overcharge foreign domestic helpers and have substantially increased the fine against them to 350 Hong Kong dollars and imprisonment of 3 years. Furthermore, with regards to the supplementary protocol of the UN Convention against the Organized Transnational Crime, China has long been committed to cracking down on human trafficking in this regard, and the 5-year plan of China is representative of China's commitment and efforts towards this cause. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is the distinguished representative of South Africa. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. According to the second cycle of the UPR and according to this cycle's national reports, China has responded that it has formed a legal framework for protection of the rights of the children. Moreover, China has abolished the one-child policy in 2015 and implemented two-child policy, which now allows birth to 2 children per pair of parents. The Narhe Haizi, who could not be registered in the National Household Registration System under the one-child policy due to fines and who were not eligible for receiving governmental welfare, now considered as beneficiaries of governmental welfare services. The delegation of South Africa would like to know if there are any measures taken to guarantee their rights. Thank you.
Thank you, delegations of South Africa, for your questions. In response, children represent the future and the hope of a nation and its development. And China, with around 280 million children, is among the countries with the largest child population. In response, when China decided to ratify the CRC, which is the Convention of Rights of the Child, we made a reservation to Article 6, stating on the inherent right to life, that China shall fulfill its obligation provided by this article under the prerequisite of planned birth provided by Article 25 of the PRC Constitution. According to the PRC Constitution, it is a constitutional requirement for Chinese citizens to abide to our birth control policies. And because of China's massive population of children, we asked for different countries to respect our birth policies under our constitutional requirements. Thank you for your question.
Thank you. And the next delegation is the distinguished representative of Indonesia. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Chair, and the delegation of Indonesia welcomes the past efforts of delegates of China to improving the human rights status of the international community. The delegation of Indonesia recognized that China emphasizes and strongly supports the common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities, which is enshrined in the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, Article 3 and 4. There has been several concerns that such stance of China shows its intention to assume less responsibility and focus more on economic development rather than environmental protection. In addition, evidence shows that China has the highest pollution rate in the world. What are the Chinese government's measures to achieve both economic development and clean air through assuming its responsibilities as the sincere member of the international society?
We would like to thank you, the delegation from Indonesia, for acknowledging our effort in counteracting the climate change issue and for posting such a thought-provoking question. We would like to address by saying that China is not just focusing on our economic development, but has taken responsibility on elevating climate change problem worldwide. For example, in September 2017, the State Council issued a white paper which further commits China's commitment to keep on putting people's health at the top of its policy agenda. And to address on the air pollution problem, in the past 5 years, Chinese government invested over 63 billion yuan into air pollution treatment. And also, China's long-term efforts in reducing carbon emission has also been recognized. In 2009, China committed to cut carbon dioxide emission per unit of GDP by 40% to 45% from the 2005 levels by 2020. At the end of 2017, China had already reduced CO2 emission per unit of GDP by 64% from the 2005 level, with the help of the country's carbon trading system. In other words, the target has been reached 3 years ahead of the schedule. China would continue its effort in this regard. Thank you for your question.
Thank you. The next delegation is to the distinguished representative of Australia. The floor is yours.
Before starting the delegation of Australia, I would like to express its gratitude toward the delegation of China for its contribution toward combating the issue of gender equality and violence, as the Beijing Declaration and Action Plan has enabled international society to move a step forward in protecting women. In the 2013 UPR, the recommendation made by the delegate of Oman was adopted, which was to exert more efforts into promoting women's rights and protection in accordance to the traditional Chinese norms and values. As traditional Confucianism requires individuals, particularly women, to forsake their individual rights and privileges for the sake of domestic stability, could the delegate kindly elaborate upon how the government is actually planning to better promote women's rights in accordance with the traditional values, especially when women themselves concede to the social atmosphere? Thank you.
So, thank you for the delegation of Australia sharing of such a thought-provoking question concerning the areas of women's domestic right in the area of China, concerning the inquiries about the Confucius value of China. Actually, the Chinese government acknowledged that in some circumstances, for example, in the workplace and the protection of female against the violence, there still have room for improvement. However, as policy and legislation have been implemented for the few decades, it shows that actually the domestic protection of women has increased, has substantially improved. For example, for the protection of physical violence, the Supreme Court started to set up guiding case on violence against women, so therefore can enhance the application of law, rendering a fair just verdict to all the physically abused women. Also, anti-domestic violence law has been enacted in 2016, preventing all sorts of physical violence against women. Concerning the workplace protection, the Chinese government has implemented the 1992 law on the detention of protection of right and interest of women. Also, in 2016, it enacts the employment promotion law, rendering the equal promotion opportunity of women. Thank you.
Thank you. The next is the distinguished representative of Mexico. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. China continues to block certain social media platforms such as Facebook, and it has political censorship throughout the internet, whilst other government-backed media sources continue to exist. In addition, an increasing number of activists and Chinese people who openly talk about political issues on their blogs are being charged of criminal acts which have led them to years of imprisonment. Are there any legislative amendments or new reformations existent to assure the freedom of expression and the freedom of the press? Thank you.
Thank you, the delegation of Mexico, for your recommendation. Regarding to your question, the Chinese government has been ready and keen to work with other UN member states as well as international organizations and agencies to advance the great cause of building a community of shared future for mankind. And regarding to internet censorship, in recent years, the world is endangered by international terrorism. Internet offers convenient communication, which becomes a useful tool for terrorists to commit illegal and dangerous activities. The Chinese government has therefore taken steps to maintain high level of national security. The Chinese government, as one of the member states, continue to comply with one of the 4 pillars of the global strategy established by the Counter-Terrorism Implementation Task Force of the United Nations. the cybersecurity law has been passed in 2016 to aim at improving internet security plans, such as refining the firewall, continue to monitor anything that poses threats to the people and the state. The authorities aspire to filter harmful content that builds and spreads terrorist propaganda in avoidance of criminal events. And in order to do that, the Chinese government is forced to impose some sort of limitation on the internet censorship. Thank you.
Thank you. The next delegation is the distinguished representative of Algeria. You have the floor.
Thank you, Your Honorable Chair. The government of Algeria welcomes China's effort to strengthen criminal punishment against buyers of abducted women and children. We also appreciate the recent information on the judicial ruling of prevention of human trafficking. However, we are concerned with the lack of support for victims of human trafficking. We would like to know how the government of China would set up more victim-oriented mechanisms that victims of human trafficking, including those who or whose families are threatened by traffickers, would be able to make complaints. Thank you.
Thank you, the delegates of Algeria, for your concern about the implementation of rehabilitation measures against the victims of human trafficking in China. China has strengthened its efforts in rehabilitating and resituating victims of human trafficking. First of all, in cross-border cases, communication and training has been provided to the officials of cross-border countries such as Vietnam, Laos, and Myanmar. These states have agreed with China to implement measures to transport victims back to their own countries safely and securely. Furthermore, China has implemented further measures in rehabilitating children, in particular in the cases of human trafficking. Technological advancement has been used by the Chinese government in order to relocate and rehabilitate children as quickly as possible. There is a database system implemented within the government organs for the facilitation of data collection of human trafficking incidences, particularly relating to missing children. And this is accessible by citizens so that they can have real-time updates with the current situation of different children and whether or not they are able to assist each other. The delegation of China further contends that China is committed to the fight against human trafficking and has implemented numerous measures against the trafficking of women and children in particular, as the state recognizes them as vulnerable members of society. Thank you.
Thank you. The next is the distinguished representative of the Philippines.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Recent reports have highlighted the issue of people under 16 years of age working in factories, many of them being migrants from rural areas. And these reports have claimed that they're working up to 16 hours a day and sometimes being beaten by their bosses if they do not comply. So with such issues in mind, the delegation of the Philippines would like to ask what actions China is taking to ensure that hazardous and exploitative child labor does not take place. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegation of Philippines, for your interest and concern on the issue. The promotion and the protection of the rights of the children constitute an important part of the International Human Rights Cause. Regarding a question on the child labor, currently in China, the minimum working age is 16 years old, as passed by the PRC labor law, which was passed in 1994 and amended in 2002. And these provisions on the prohibition of using child labor was also passed in 2002. In 2003, 8 central government authorities, including the Ministry of Labor, Ministry of Public Security, and Ministry of Education, jointly issued a notice to reinforce the implementation of these child labor provisions to prevent child labor. Article 15 of the Labor Law also prohibits an employer to recruit minors under the age of 16, and is also enforced through investigation and different jobs of the government authorities. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker on our list is the distinguished representative of Spain. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Honorable Chair. The delegation of Spain would like to applaud the efforts of the Chinese government to implement strict loading bans and subsidies for residents in forested areas, which, according to experts, the overall effect is successful. Spain also recognizes still that China is still faced with large population pressure alongside industrial development and urbanization. Spain also expects that residents in rural areas are most likely dependent on a select few industries, for example, mainly agriculture, to sustain themselves. With this in mind, how does the Chinese government intend to continue addressing the issue of protecting forests amidst urban development? Also, adding on to this, how has the Chinese government ensured that residents in rural areas have rights to be sustainable and their lifestyles to be protected during urban development? Thank you.
Thank you for the delegation of Spain for the sustained interest in these issues, and we would like to show gratitude for your questions. China has significant determination in addressing these environmental issues, and with regards to the afforestation issue, China has fulfilled the task for forestry protections in the rural areas and reached the 2020 targets in 2017 as well. And with regards to the soil pollution problem, China has implemented the 2018 guideline to comprehensive enhance ecological and environmental protections and lead the battle against pollution, environmental, water, and soil policies. It lays down specific measures against pollution and targets that it's expected to achieve by 2020. She also enhanced the control of soil pollution and restored the polluted soil, and make sure to have detailed inspections on the soil quality and compiling these for subsequent follow-ups. And in the major cities, there should also be basic household garbage sorting system in places. Also, with regards to your inquiries about the rural areas, China has also made significant efforts in providing water supply to the rural residents. And according to the Ministry of Water Resources, the rural population has gained access to the water supply, and the population is around 221 billion. So thank you for your questions, and China will continue her efforts in environmental protection. Thank you.
Thank you. The next is the distinguished representative of the United Kingdom. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Honorable Chair. The delegation of the United Kingdom recognizes the efforts in improving the gender inequality and violence in China. This delegate would like to ask what expected time frame and concrete steps do the government of China and authorities consider taking in order to establish an independent national-level female rights organizations with competence to consider and act on complaints of female rights violations by public authorities. Thank you.
So thank you for the question raised by the delegation of the United Kingdom. The Chinese government has actually implemented lots of policy handling the complaints and solve the concerns raised by the women in China. In China, there are actually 700,000 women's home and women's center dedicated for handling the complaints and report made by the women in China. Annually, it handles more than 250,000 letters written by all the females, and also these organizations would pay visits and make phone calls to all the physically abused or discriminated women in the workplace, handling their needs. Also, annually, over 6,000 legal assistance was provided to all these physically abused or and discriminated women in the area of workplace. So China will continue her greatest effort in ensuring there is a report mechanism or some organization handling the complaints dedicated to the complaints made by the Chinese women. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is the distinguished representative of Fiji. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. The delegation of Fiji wants to ask about freedom of expression in China. As the delegation of Mexico said, the China government is blocking access to dozens of websites, including Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. According to a report in 2017, China government has closed as much as 13,000 sites in the last 3 years. However, China government claims that the government has the right to manage the internet. We think such a move violates the people's right to know. We wanted to know which measures does China government implement for people's right to know. Thank you.
Thank you, delegation of Fiji. We express our gratitude for your concern. As mentioned in our previous response, certain level of restrictions on freedom of speech, such as on social media, are required in order to secure national security, especially because China is a country with a big population. However, it is ensured that the work of monitoring internet content is to be done carefully and appropriately. The OCCAC shall make sure that the content is to be filtered when necessary in order to afford limiting unreasonably freedom of speech in the country. However, as we are aware that China has been filtered, this netizens in China have been not given the access to other global websites. China will continue to work on opening their borders in terms of the internet access. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is the distinguished representative of Jordan. The floor is yours.
Thank you. With current situation in China, with a skewed sex ratio, it is more difficult for young men to find Chinese wives. Especially men in rural areas have resorted to mail-order brides from all over Asia, fueling sex trafficking. The most vulnerable group of women are North Korean defectors who cannot escape by seeking their country's embassy or consulate, like other women. Does Chinese government have any special measures for North Korean women defectors and forced repatriation of victims of trafficking by the Chinese authority? Thank you.
Thank you for the question raised by the delegation of Jordan. In order to respond to concern, Ministry of Civil Affairs, as the delegation of China, affirmably declared that Chinese government attach great importance to combating the human trafficking, especially that human trafficking in China is a serious crime. And campaigns have been launched against the cross-border crimes of abducting and trafficking women, promoting cooperation process with 6 Mekong River sub-region countries. And China and Vietnam have seemed to be continuing their cooperation as evidenced by the state's 2015 attendance in an annual meeting aiming to evaluate their bilateral agreement on their measures against human trafficking and further cooperation plans for 2016. In 2017, Ministry of Public Security organized and directed 7 public security agencies, including Vietnam, to crack down a large cross-border and cross-regional criminal gang of the Vietnamese women, like the human trafficking, about the forced marriage. And in terms of the North Korea, the factors, the human trafficking, China also committed to promote the cooperation with cross-border campaigns to improve this situation. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker on the list is the distinguished representative of Vietnam.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you to the honorable delegation of China for being here today. We hope that there are efforts underway to avoid discrimination against ethnic minorities. Could the delegation specify what measures are being taken in China to avoid discrimination against ethnic minority children? Thank you.
Thank you, delegations of Vietnam, for your question. China has been working hard, putting effort on increasing diversity and also inclusive education among our country. The local governments are implementing compulsory education varying from economically developed east to the undeveloped west. So whether urban areas or rural areas, we're also trying to include all of our citizens, all of our children in our compulsory education. China will accept primary and junior high school students in its rural west from tuition and other education expenses, pledging to implement similar policies in other areas throughout the years. These are all evidence that China is trying to incorporate our rural area children as well as our minorities in our compulsory education system, working to make diversity a part of our education system. Furthermore, according to the Social Development Goals 2030 by the United Nations, Goal 4 is to ensure that by 2030, all girls and boys, regardless of their ethnicity, complete, free, equitable, and quality primary and secondary education. This is also a sustainable development goal that China has been working on achieving. I hope this answers your question. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is the distinguished representative of Brazil. The first rules.
Thank you, Chair. In its national reports, China states that the PM 2.5 level has fallen by 54%. However, this level is limited to the capital region. The 2013 action plan by China only set targets for Beijing, Tianjin, Hebei, and the Pearl and the Yangtze deltas. In contrast, nationwide air quality only showed 4.5% decrease, and official data shows that out of 338 cities throughout China, only 231 have still not yet reached the Chinese government standard on PM 2.5 levels.
How will China address the regional discrepancy in air qualities? How will it widen the scope of environmental plan? Thank you.
Thank you the delegation of Brazil for raising this question. In our national report, we included data of the decrease of PM 2.5 level fell by 54% in Beijing only, because Beijing is notably the most polluted area in China. However, we strive to monitor the PM 2.5 level throughout the country. And indeed, as mentioned, we have a 2018 guideline to win the battle against pollution of air, water, and soil. And according to this guideline, China will implement a 3-year plan to fight air pollution, with particular focus on regions like Beijing and the Yangtze River Delta. Efforts will be put to improve the region's industrial, energy, transport, and land use structures. By 2020, cities with low air quality standards should have their PM 2.5 level decreased by at least 18% compared to the 2015 level. Apart from this especially focused area, cities at prefecture level and above should also see the number of good air days reach over 80% annually. China, in its battle against air pollution, does not just focus on areas like Beijing and other seriously polluted areas. We aim to continue our effort in winning this battle against air pollution countrywide. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is the distinguished representative of New Zealand. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Honorable Chair and fellow delegations of China. New Zealand expresses concern in regards to population and family planning law, especially no child policy for unmarried women. According to the law, unmarried women and single mothers cannot be granted a birth permit, which is required for birth certificates for their children. Moreover, there were several reported forced abortion cases by local government officials toward whom do not abide to the law. Accordingly, New Zealand would like to ask if the government of China is willing to consider permitting pregnancy of unmarried women and abolishing the enormous fine for such pregnancy imposed to only women. Also, New Zealand would like to ask if how government is dealing with such forced abortion cases which could be deemed as serious violence against women. Thank you.
Thank you, the delegation of New Zealand, for the question. And there has been a rare case in forcing the abortion of women in China, and in fact, the maternal mortality rate has decreased significantly throughout the years. In the 1990s, there are 88.8 per 100,000 birth has been, the fetus has been dead, and in 2014 there is only 21.7 per 100,000, and it has achieved the United Nations Millennium Development Goals ahead of time, and actually the World Health Organization has listed China as one of the 10 countries with high performance in maternal and child health.
Also, as for the forced abortion issue, I think the two-child policy, the Chinese are thinking that by adopting the two-child policy, it will annually increase the 500,000 births per annual. Also, in most location, the Chinese government has promised to sack officials and some government officials who conducted forced abortion. And in previous year, the criminal law amendment, there has been sections stipulating that the Chinese government will intensify the physical violence against women by legislative methods. So the Chinese government believes that by adopting all these policies, the issue of forced abortion could be eased step by step. Thank you.
Thank you. This concludes the first round of questions and responses, and now we will proceed to the second round of additional questions and responses. And the next speaker on our list is the distinguished representative of Cuba. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Cuba welcomes the action to expand access to internet while protecting users from potential online threats. In this regard, Cuba would like to know what is the criteria employed by the government of China to filter contents, and whether the government has consulted with the civil society in determining the standards, and if not, whether China is open to further accepting recommendations from the civil society in amending the criteria to filter contents. Thank you.
Thank you, the delegation of Cuba. Regarding to internet censorship, China has been imposing relatively stricter limitations on internet access. apart from the reasons mentioned previously, it is also for whether the content is considered healthy. So in regards to your question asking for the criteria for them to impose limitations, they focus on content that is considered sexual or violent on the internet. There have been young children nowadays have access to internet. In order to protect them, the Chinese government is determined to offer the best protection to them through the right level of content filtering. The authorities continue to maintain online video streaming platforms. This is regards to previously mentioned by other delegates that websites such as Facebook have been limited for Chinese citizens to access. However, it is unfortunate that websites such as Facebook has been involved in spreading violent and sexual content. And regarding to whether Chinese government is open and ready to accept opinions from the citizens, the Chinese government has been opening online platforms for them as complaint systems. So if there are any complaints about whether they can get access on certain websites, they are welcome and encouraged to express their concerns and opinions. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I recognize the representative of Cuba. But please bear in mind that the Chinese delegation has already exhausted their speaking time, so please confine your intervention to comments or recommendations. You have the floor.
Cuba wanted to go back to its previous question from the previous round that was left unanswered due to time constraints on whether the status of foreign NGOs will be expanded or not. And would like to further look forward to amendments to the current 2017 laws on the foreign NGOs in order to incorporate further the activities as well as cooperation with not only the domestic and local NGOs but also the foreign NGOs that are actively working in the lands of the People's Republic of China. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker on our list is the distinguished representative of the United States of America. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. Like funds for North Korean refugees, so-called volunteer, reported that China's policy of forcible repatriation of refugees from a neighboring country put them in an extremely vulnerable position, especially regarding trafficking. Joint Submission 9 recommended that China agree to a visit request by the Special Rapporteur with Elephant Care, recommending an invitation to the Special Rapporteurs on migrants and on trafficking. How did China follow up on these recommendations? Thank you.
Thank you for the question raised by the delegation of the United States. The delegation of China have to repeatedly emphasize that our commitment to combat the human trafficking. And in recent years, the state has continuously increased its effort to cooperate with relevant countries in tackling transnational trafficking in human beings. By 2014, the Chinese Ministry of Public Security had established direct bilateral police cooperation with 83 countries and regions. As in 2016, China has conducted 121 criminal, civil, judicial assistance treaties and extradition treaties with 67 countries. At present, China has signed intergovernmental anti-trafficking cooperation agreements with neighboring Asian nations such as Myanmar, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Indonesia, and Philippines. And China has established 8 law and enforcement cooperation license offices in those countries, including 4 establishments with Vietnam giving full play to the role of channels, establishing hotline links, forming a regular meeting system, and major cases and special cases will be notified at any time to the cross-border trafficking crimes and promptly rescue the transfer of victims of the trafficking. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I recognize the United States again. You have the floor again.
Does this delegation have the additional time remaining to ask the further question?
This was a procedural question, right? So, could you please ask the question again? What was your question?
So does this delegation have the time remaining to ask the additional question?
You have 27 seconds left, right? So you can use the time.
Okay,
The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. While this delegation still have the question unanswered, specifically referring to the North Korean refugees, this delegation will move on to the next question, which is with reference to the situation at MSAR. CESCR in 2005 and C18 in 2008 expressed concern at the incidence of trafficking for sexual exploitation purposes. So CESCR and CED8 noted that what concerns the increase in the number of domestic violence cases, what measures is China planning to reinforce to prevent future violations?
Thank you for the delegation of the United States. China has aware of the situation. We are continuously put effort to, in cooperation with the North Korea government, to attack this serious crime.
Thank you. The next speaker is the distinguished representative of South Africa. The floor is yours.
First of all, the delegation of South Africa would like to express its gratitude for China's continuous efforts on rights of the children. It is known that China has signed many international conventions on the rights of the children, including Convention on the Rights of the Child, as known as CRC of the United Nations, which was signed in 1992. Were there any progression or revision of the policy on the rights of children reporting to these international treaties? And if there were any, were there any continuous monitoring system in China to ensure the effective implementation of these policies? Thank you.
The Chinese delegation would like to thank South Africa delegation for this question you have posted. In response to the first answer in the first round of the interactive dialogue, China has mentioned that we have signed the Convention on the Rights of the Children, the CRC, as South Africa has just mentioned. And in this ratification, we have made a reservation to Article 6 on the CRC, on the inherent right to life, stating that China shall fulfill its obligation provided by this article under the prerequisite of planned birth provided by Article 25 of the PRC Constitution. And following up our previous question, under the PRC Constitution, it is a constitutional requirement for our citizens to abide to our country's birth control policies. And once again, we ask for all countries to respect China's constitutional requirement, in the sense that China is among the countries with the largest child population, and we have been working our best effort to protect our children's rights. Thank you.
Yes, I recognize the delegation of South Africa. The floor is yours again.
Thank you for answering the question of South Africa, and the delegation would like to further recommend the continuous efforts guarantee the quality of life of the children who are not registered in the National Household Registration System under the one-child policy, which is not sufficiently answered in the first question. And along with this, I hope that China will continue its efforts to guarantee the rights of the children. Thank you.
The delegation of China notes the measures South Africa has given, and we are currently seeking measures to solve this problem at the moment in China. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker on our list is the distinguished representative of Indonesia. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, and the distinguished delegations from the People's Republic of China. This delegation of Indonesia would like to ask a question regarding the biodiversity of the People's Republic of China. According to the national report, it could be recognized that China has put a lot of efforts in order to purify the waters that the human beings drink. But other than such waters, how is the current status quo of the waters where those various species of the very wide mainland China, those species live? This delegation of Indonesia is very curious. Thank you.
Thank you, delegation of Indonesia, for raising these significant questions, because China has great determination to address the water and biodiversity and water pollution problems in response to these issues. We are aware that species and organisms are very significant to the nature and the environment, and the water quality is very important for the continuous health. And therefore, China has implemented several policies in dealing with the water pollution issues in China. Over these few years, China has closed down has targeting on the high polluting industries such as textiles and heavy metals, and also some clothing industries to prevent these waste, sewage and polluted water to leak into the rivers and the ponds, and prevents them to threaten our biodiversity. And in regards to these policies, China has closed down around 50,000 of companies that are high polluting industries, and also collect 4 million penalties from these enterprises that breaches the law. Thank you for your questions again, and China will continue the great efforts in treating the water. Thank you.
Yes, I recognize the delegation of Indonesia again. Before giving the floor, please be reminded that the corresponding state under review, Chinese delegation has only 8 seconds left for response. So with that in mind, I give the floor to Indonesia again.
Thanks, Chair. This delegation of Indonesia would like to make a very short comment that in the past, in the first international climate change regime, on the basis of the Kyoto Protocol, it was definite that China, the PRC, was part of the developing states. So maybe their responsibilities and capabilities were relatively small when current status quo. However, under the Paris Agreement, it is very clear that China is one of the most developed and with the highest responsibility and biggest capability in the world. So this delegation of Indonesia would like to ask the PRC that always recognize that PRC is one of the most important actors in combating the climate change in the international society. Thank you.
Thank you for your questions. And China has recently provided financial and technological assistance to over 30 developing countries in water conservancy and hydropower plants construction. Also provide trainings internationally. Thank you for your questions, and hope you can answer the inquiry.
Thank you. The next speaker is on the list is the distinguished representative of Australia. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Subsequent to the interactive dialogue of the 2013 UPR, the delegation of China reiterated that it had formed a complete legal framework for the protection of the rights of women and children. However, in regards to this, it was evaluated that women face difficulty in obtaining restraining orders, and that this hinders the nation's ability to protect the female population from sex offenders as well as domestic violence. Taking this into consideration, the delegation of Australia would like to politely request an elaboration onto how China plans to overcome this obstacle. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. The Chinese government has made major progress in legislation addressing violence against women. 29 provinces have formulated local regulations or policies to prevent and prohibit domestic violence. The Anti-Domestic Violence Law was adopted during the 18th session of the 12th National People's Congress Standing Committee in December 2015, and this law came into force in March 2016. And the Chinese government has strengthened protection of women, especially for girls under the age of 14. The Amendment 6 to the Criminal Law of the People's Republic of China was approved in August 2015, which specified harsher punishment for crimes of raping girls under the age of 14 and abducting and trafficking in women and children. The Chinese government has also strengthened judicial protection of women's rights and interests. In 2014, the Supreme People's Court set out guiding cases on domestic violence and enhanced the unified application of law.
Besides legislation, the Chinese government has actively promulgated policies for women in China to make reports anonymously through the mailbox and hotlines. These complaints will be handled by the local organizations and NGOs, which will help the Chinese women to get access to the legal assistance of lawyers. Also, the Chinese government has been actively engaged with the local and international NGOs. For example, there are campaigns like Care for Girls campaign, which would provide social workers for those who has previously been sexually or physically or violently assaulted. And I hope with the concerted effort and all the effort made by Chinese government, this issue could be still in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I recognize Australia again. Please confine your intervention to recommendations or comments only. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. As the issue of gender equality remains a pressing moral, economic, and social issue, the delegation of Australia would like to first recommend that the nation further enforces existing policies and provides structural support on these issues of harassment so that more women will be able to combat against unequal treatment. And secondly, we would like to recommend that more issues are done in regards to the one-child policy, as 60 million girls have not yet received the legal recognition needed to receive basic social support. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker on our list of speakers is the distinguished representative of Mexico. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. First of all, we would like to ask about the current conditions about reports stated by the Human Rights Council in 2017, where 60 human rights lawyers and advocates for freedom of expressions were arrested in China. Is it correct to understand that the current status quo for the cybersecurity and anti-terrorism scheme, these individuals were arrested? Is it correct to understand it in this way?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question. The Ministry of Industry and Information Technology of the People's Republic of China has main responsibilities, such as to determine the Chinese industrial planning policies, to safeguard China's information security, and to promote the development of major technological equipment and innovation concerning the communication sector. In regard to your concern, the Judiciary Department of China is in the progress of making improvements, such as law reform of the Criminal Procedure Law from 2014. China aspires to build a better country for maintaining balance between state sovereignty and freedom of opinion and expression. I hope that this answers the question. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I recognize Mexico again. The floor is yours.
We would like to give a recommendation of, first of all, bail out certain individuals who are activists, human rights activists, especially for freedom of expression, in order to clarify and get rid of the blurred line of the intent of China trying to respect the freedom of expression itself.
Thank you for your recommendation.
Thank you. The next speaker, oh, yes, I recognize, no? Okay, I will go on. The next speaker is the distinguished representative of Algeria. You have the floor.
Thank you, Honorable Chairs. Government of Algeria is concerned that forced labor is still happening in prison, even though RTL, re-education through labor, was abolished in 2013. Regarding labor trafficking, how does the government of China combat ongoing forced labor in detention facilities and also drug rehabilitation facilities? Thank you.
We thank the delegation of Algeria for their insight into forced labor. According to the 2018 working report of the Supreme People's Procuratorate, which highlights the relevant achievements made in the period of 2013 throughout 2017, one of the achievements of the state is that it has made resolutions to prosecute and punish laborers who are left in arrears in payment. The prosecution also reported 7,957 cases concerning claims for labor compensation and supported the migrant workers to prosecute 9,176 criminals. Therefore, the delegation of China contends that the state has made evident efforts in order to combat forced labor. Furthermore, in this report, in 2017 December, there has been special supervision given to migrant workers, and it was discussed throughout the period. Before the Chinese Lunar New Year of the same year, the Procuratorate supported more than 5,000 migrant workers in their lawsuits to help recover labor compensation, as well as helping them receive compensation with regards to their wages and welfare. This has amounted to 46.05 million won. Furthermore, 370 prosecution suggestions were issued to relevant departments in order for them to better supervise law enforcement in this regard. As a result, more than 20,000 migrant workers were able to recover upwards 340 million won of wages owed, providing them sufficient funds for supporting their families. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I recognize Algeria again. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Honorable Chairs. Government of Algeria would like to make a recommendation to government of China. Even though a one-child policy was abolished a few years ago, people left behind, in other words, people who don't have a birth certificate or trafficked and forced marriage or forced to work. So government of Algeria would like encourage government of China to take measures to combat human trafficking of people left behind and protect their rights. Thank you.
Thank you. The next delegation is the distinguished representative of the Philippines. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. In China, occurrences of large-scale industrial pollution remain important issues. And given that in physical terms, children are the most vulnerable to such pollution and toxins, and given that furthermore there have been many occurrences of children accruing negative health effects or disabilities from such environmental pollution, what measures are in place to ensure that children in particular are protected from such threats? And furthermore, how are families compensated in these cases, and how are they being allowed to seek justice in cases where their children have been poisoned by such industrial pollution? Thank you.
Thank you, delegation of Philippines, for a question. The Chinese government is active in the promotion and protection of the rights of the children. And in regard to health, China has been in the process of reforming the healthcare system for more than a decade, and children's healthcare is covered through their parents' labor insurance. And this labor insurance was replaced. And this labor insurance was replaced by the employees' basic medical insurance in 1998. And this State Council now is in the process of a new medical insurance system to cover children
and other citizens for this basic medical insurance. Furthermore, by the China's SDG goals, China opts to China's goal 3 opts to aim to achieve universal health coverage, including the access to essential medicines and vaccines for children of China. Thank you.
Thank you. I will then move on to the next speaker, which is the Legislative Representative of Spain. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. The delegation of Spain would like to applaud the efforts of China to curb air pollution, such as meeting the reduced CO2 emissions target in 2017. Nevertheless, Spain understands the air pollution is still rampant. So can the Chinese government please elaborate any policies that support the health of students from air pollution? Thank you.
Thank you, the delegation of Spain, for acknowledging our effort and posing us this question. Indeed, to address the compensation issue, China has introduced legal reforms to guarantee environmental rights of the public. In 2012, the Standing Committees of the National People's Congress revised the Civil Procedure Law (CPL) and set up a public interest litigation (PIL) system. A subsequent amendment to the CPL, effective in 2013, added provision for environmental PAL in particular. Coupled with the revised Environmental Protection Law, which went into effective in 2015, qualified environmental NGOs are now permitted to file PIL to protect public interest in relation to environmental issues. Notably, the All China Environmental Federal, one of the qualified organizations, has already brought lawsuits against various companies for pollution-related claims. So, victims of air pollution or other pollution problem can go to these NGOs to rely on their resources to go to court to sue the source of pollution. Thank you.
Thank you. The next delegation is the distinguished representative of the United Kingdom. You have the floor.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson, and also the government of China for putting all the efforts on making that gender equality and education. The delegation of United Kingdom has a question about what expected concrete steps does the government of China consider supporting or cooperating with the LGBTQ NGOs and NPOs and domestic civil society groups along with the international communities. Thank you.
Thank you for your question and for acknowledging our efforts. The Chinese government does not disapprove of the LGBT issue, and in the Hong Kong Bill of Rights Ordinance 1991 prohibits discrimination on a variety of grounds, including other status. In the Hong Kong case of Leung William vs. Secretary for Justice, this has been interpreted to include sexual orientation. The Macau Basic Law Article 25 indicates the people of Macau are free from discrimination. Based on a non-exhaustive list of prohibited factors, there are anti-discrimination protection based on sexual orientation in the fields of labor relations, protection of personal data, and ombudsman.
The Chinese government acknowledged that there is still room of improvement for the recognition of LGBT people in the Chinese community. For the efforts put in the context of Hong Kong and Macau, it has been the progress. We have achieved a substantive progress in the context of the HKSAR and Macau, and the Chinese government has always said that we should aim all laws to stop discrimination against all races, gender, and sexual orientation. The Chinese government will hereby promise to take prompt measures handling the discrimination of LGBT in Chinese context following the successful example of Hong Kong and Macau. So thank you.
Thank you. Then let me move on to the next speaker, which is the distinguished representative of Fiji. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. The delegation of Fiji wants to ask about freedom of expression in China. As China opens the door to the world and pushes for national development, the voices of media and intellectuals are expected to grow. The media should be compatible with the government anytime, anywhere. However, the Chinese government is now trying to create strict rules for reporting editors on the internet for the purpose of strengthening management. And according to the Reporters Without Borders, 104 journalists were imprisoned around the world. I would like to hear Chinese government's opinion about the situation that Chinese reporters' freedom to broadcast and interview has been denied. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. China is not the only country that imposes censorship on the internet. This alone indicates the concern of inappropriate and illegal contents on the internet. It's global. China values the importance of freedom of opinion and expression. China is also in the progress of opening up to global internet access, while an adequate filtering mechanism between China and global websites such as Facebook or Instagram is yet to be established. The Chinese government is yet to be prepared to expose their citizens to the global internet content. Nevertheless, the delegation of China would like to place emphasis on our determination to uphold freedom of opinion and expression, as China aspires for their citizens to be heard, right, and well. In the national report, in the National Human Rights Action Plan of China 2016 to 2020, the Chinese government is determined to give full play to supervision by newspapers, magazines, radio, television, and other types of traditional media, increasing the interaction between the traditional media and new media like the internet, and highlighting law-based online supervision. Protection in accordance with the law shall be extended to the rights of news agencies and their staff to information, interview, publication, criticism, and supervision. Thank you for your question. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you. The next speaker on our list of speakers is the distinguished representative of Jordan. The floor is yours.
Thank you. The state of Jordan is concerned of the legal framework and working level case management of child trafficking. Local police are reported to refuse registering cases until they are solved to cover up the numbers. It is also concerned that these cases are handled as administrative issues rather than criminal prosecutions. What efforts will Chinese government make to improve legal frameworks on these working level issues? Thank you.
Thank you, the delegation of Jordan, for your concern about this issue. First of all, according to the 2018 Working Report of the Supreme People's Court, highlighting relevant achievements within the period of 2012 to 2017, one of the achievements is that the court has made a statement regarding the severe punishment of crimes against women as well as children. In regards to the sale and trafficking of children, the Chinese government contends that it has taken effective measures to prevent and severely punish crimes in the trafficking of women and children in its national report on children development as mentioned by our other delegates who handled rights of the child. Furthermore, China has long been committed to cracking down on human trafficking and criminalizing it. The criminal law stipulates that those who traffic in women and children shall be sentenced to a fixed term of imprisonment of at least 5 years and with a maximum sentence of 10 years. The death penalty shall be imposed in particular when the circumstances are serious. The Criminal Law Amendment Number 9, which came into effect in 2015, clearly stipulates that the purchase of trafficked women as well as children is a crime punishable by either imprisonment for at most 3 years, criminal detention, or control. This clearly reflects the intensified efforts of China in fighting against the trafficking of women and children in particular. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker on our list is the distinguished representative of Vietnam. I was informed that you had around 27 seconds left, so we will give you the floor again. Jordan? For around 27 seconds. You have the floor again.
Thank you. So in relation to the first question and also the second question, the state of Georgia is concerned of the forced repatriation of North Korean defectors who are victims of trafficking and sent by the Chinese authority. So could you please give us an insight on this? Thank you.
Thank you for the question raised by the delegation. And Chinese delegation had to emphasize that first, China has its own rule and procedures to intake the refugees, including North Korea and the other countries. And also, human trafficking is a global serious crime. It is impossible for China itself to combat the transporter human trafficking problem. In this,
the delegation of China further contends that the state has made tremendous efforts in even in regards with the situation of North Korean refugees. Thank you.
Thank you. Now to the next speaker, which is the distinguished representative of Vietnam. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. The delegation of Vietnam would like to congratulate the delegation of China on their improved efforts over the last 9 years to improve access to education, in particular rural access and inclusion of ethnic minorities. Further to the question from the delegation of the Philippines, are equal efforts being applied to children with disabilities to allow them to reach their maximum potential in education? Thank you.
The Chinese delegation would like to thank the Vietnam delegation for the furthering question of the previous question from the Philippines. In response to your question, China has been continuing our effort to ensure equal education to all children in our country. So this does not only extend to children of rural areas or migrant children, but also we have policies for disabled children. The local government at or above county level is required to set up special schools to provide compulsory education for school-age children who have disabilities in vision, hearing, and intelligence. These special schools are to be equipped with sites and facilities which adapt to the study, recovery, and living needs of the disabled children. Also, for those special needs children who are capable of studying in ordinary schools, the schools must accept them without discrimination and provide aids for their study and recovery according to the law. These are some of the policies China has been undertaking to promote the rights of children with disabled needs in terms of special education. Also, these disabled children, the rights of these disabled children has also been included in China's implementation of the Sustainability Development Goals, number 4, extensive education targets, which includes ensuring 12 years of free education for children with disabilities. And furthermore, the delivery of President Xi Jinping's pledge to provide 120,000 training opportunities and 150,000 scholarships for other developing countries by 2020, including for scholars from the less developed countries, so as to ensure equal education throughout our country for our children. I hope this answers your question. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I recognize Vietnam again. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you to the delegation of China for your clarification. And we would just like to thank you for your continued efforts on this matter and on the matter of children in rural areas of the delegation of Vietnam. We would also like to take this time to just reiterate our desire to collaborate on the issue of child brides from rural Vietnam being moved into China. And we hope that the delegation of China is able to put further measures into place into returning these children to Vietnam. But thank you very much.
Thank you. The next speaker is the distinguished representative of Brazil. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. As the Chinese delegate previously answered, China currently has one nationwide plan, which is reducing PM 2.5 level of each cities by 18% by 2020. However, this plan overlooks local regional differences. For example, as delegate said previously, over 70 cities in China already met the 2020 target in 2017. Therefore, these cities have no further motivation to further decrease air pollution since they have already met the target. Will China set additional aims for the cities that have already met the aims? And will China set different aims by the region considering the regional differences? Thank you.
We would like to thank the delegate from Brazil for posing us this question. It is true that our target has been reached prior to the schedule, but this does not mean that we will stop our effort in combating air pollution. Indeed, China, being well known as the world factory, has contributed to the world economy significantly. While the less polluting industries such as R&D headquarters are located in more developed countries like the United States, we, as a world factory, contribute to the world economy. Carbon emission is the inevitable byproduct of this contribution. We hope the international community to realize that setting this target is already a very promising commitment by the Chinese government. Being ahead of the schedule is an implication that China has attached significant effort in elevating climate change. In light of this success, China would continue its effort and will further commit itself to contribute in this regard if possible. This includes setting a more promising target upon a more sophisticated analysis and consideration. But for the meantime, we hope the international community to respect Chinese government decision in setting this target. Thank you.
Thank you. And now the last speaker, I believe, is the distinguished representative of New Zealand. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Honorable Chair and delegations of China. New Zealand would like to express gratitude for the commitments of the government of China, such as new anti-domestic violence law, to tackle and ultimately eradicate domestic violence. In this regard, can Chinese government explain the definition so it is comprehensive enough of the domestic violence under the law, and if the rape or sexual violence between married couple is included as domestic violence?
Thank you to the delegation of New Zealand for showing their fervent interest over the implementation of law, domestic violence law in China. Actually, the Chinese government has recognized that there are some loopholes and some flaws in her laws. For example, how to constitute like physical violence and the burden of proof of the claimant. And also, the Chinese government recognized the problem is that the legal costs of for making a claim in the Chinese court are relatively high. So these are the flaws that we think the Chinese government can actually improve on. The Chinese government, it is encouraging to see that with the enactment of these laws, some of the women in China could be able to get access to legal protection because decades ago, the Chinese government has no unified and no specific law in the area of domestic violence. However, in the report and the goals established by the Chinese government, it said that it would intensify the punishment and specifically states that how to establish a claim and the burden of proof and the definition of all the provision in these legislation. So with the not too distant future, with the legal amendment, we're sure the law could be better and more women could get access to legal protection. Thank you.
Yes, I recognize the delegation of New Zealand again. You have to go again.
Thank you for explanation, but I still like to ask for the unanswered question. If the rape between the unmarried couple is included as the domestic violence, because this is a very important part which cannot be easily recognized or acknowledged as domestic violence in many countries.
Thank you for your question. Rape between a married couple is a crime under criminal law in Hong Kong. They do not have a marital exception, like a husband can be convicted of raping his wife. I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Yes, I recognize New Zealand again.
Yeah.
The floor is yours.
Thank you. As a recommendation, New Zealand would like to ask China to include rape and sexual violence in domestic violence law so there is no victims left out of protection under the law. Thank you.
Thank you. Due to the limited time, I will just skip the remaining speaking time. And this was the last speaker for today, and this concludes the review of China. I wish to thank once again, Her Excellency Ms. Melissa Nievas, head of delegation of China, and the delegation for the preparation and participation in today's review. And my thanks also go to all recommending states for their constructive and active engagement in the UPR process. We will reconvene this afternoon at 3:20, I believe, for the presentation of the outcome report of the Republic of Korea and that of China. And please, Republic of Korea and China, prepare and finalize your outcome report within 30 minutes. And if you finish finalize your report, please transmit this by USB stick to the Secretariat so they can make a copy and perhaps circulate those documents to the participants. Is there any other announcements? If not, I believe. Yes, the meeting is closed. Thank you. And let's have just a quick photo.